Most of us have either used or depended on banks since we were very young, or people that we love have either used or depended on banks, and we've seen them do this time and time again. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to go to the bank with my grandmother and even my mom and my father, and I would get a sucker. And I would love going to the bank because I always got a sucker. And it wasn't until like later on when I got older, I started to question like, man, we can go to the banks and we have to even pay them to hold our money, but they actually use our money without giving us any. And I thought about maybe it's a reason why they give us suckers. And those suckers were called dum-dums. I don't know if you're young enough to remember, but those suckers were specifically called dum-dums, and they always had an abundance of them. Like they were never low, and it's like the older I got, the more I'm like, man, it's probably a reason for that. But anyway, I want to show you and I want to tell you about 7 secrets that the banks do not want you to know about specifically this year. And the thing that I really want you to understand is like they are an entity that literally like they use us. And I know that might sound negative and bad things like that. However, if you understand what you're dealing with and you understand how to use them instead of just being used by them, then it could be a win-win for you. Because I believe there's a difference between being used and being utilized. They use us, we utilize them. And one of the things that I really want you to understand is that when it comes to the banks, there's no risk on their side. Like there is absolutely no risk on their side whatsoever. And you think about this, banks only loan people money when they really don't need it. Like when you don't need money, they will loan you all the money in the world. But when you do need money, that's when they're not going to lend you money or lend you a small amount and not lend you enough that you really need. And you think about this, if you borrow money from a bank and you default on your payment or you're late, like there's penalties to that. And when you think about the bank, what penalties do they have? What do they even have at risk? Because the reality is they're not even using any of their own money to loan us. If you haven't watched one of my other videos, there's something called fractional reserve, meaning that a bank only has to have 10% in their possession of what they loan. So what does that mean? That means that if a bank wants to loan out $10,000, they only need to have $1,000. And so when you think about it, they don't really have anything at risk because the $1,000 that they got, that was a deposit from somebody else. So a lot of times it's like they're borrowing somebody else's money to loan to somebody else to make a fortune out of, and then they're loaning money that they don't even have. And so like that's one thing that the banks really don't want you to know, because when you really look at the system for what it is, then you start to question, why do I keep putting my money here and getting charged these fees for them to use my money? Like that is the ultimate letdown. They're charging you to use your money, and then if you're like 2 cents less, they charge you $35 for overdraft fee. And that's something that the banks do not want you to know. Now, another secret that the banks do not want you to know is that they want you to save your money, but they never do the same. When you think about banks, like there's all these commercials on like saving money and getting a savings account or getting a checking account. And, if you keep your money in the bank, for 50 years, then you'll get compounding interest on $5,000. And it's, but they strongly encourage us to save. But guess what? They don't do the same thing. Like when they get our money, they instantly loan it out to make money, because the one thing that the banks know is that the more you get money to work, the more that money is going to bring back other workers, meaning other money. They want us to just put our money in the bank and let it lay around and be lazy and let it be unemployed. They don't do that, but they want us to save. And so the thing that I really want to encourage people to just consider is, if the banks can use our money to make money, how about we just skip the middleman altogether and find ways where we can do the same investments that the banks are doing and make money from our own money? Because that's what a lot of super wealthy people do. Like wealthy people, they don't really leave their money in banks because they know it's a ripoff. They know it's a scam. Now they borrow money from banks, but they don't put their money in these big bank and these big institutions because they understand that it's a loss. Like it's a lose-lose situation. And so the next time you see a bank and they're talking about saving, I want you to consider, are you doing that? Because if they're not, then what are they doing? And whatever they're doing is something that is important for us to model. Because when you think about banks, they have a whole lot of money, but most of it is not theirs. Another secret the banks do not want you to know is that they are not financial advisors. They are a business. And sometimes people go to their banker for advice. And it's like they don't realize that their banker and this bank that they're banking with is a business. And businesses are in the business for what? For a profit. They want to make a profit. So people don't realize that they're going to someone to give them advice who has a vested interest on how can they get as much money out of this person as they possibly can to increase their bottom line, to increase their profits. So banks are like they are not financial advisors. Yeah, they are around a lot of money, but most of it is not theirs. And when it comes to even like financial, and this is, hear me out, like I am not trying to disrespect or demean or anything of that nature people that work at banks. I know people that work, matter of fact, like I have some family members that work at banks as well. And so I'm not trying to demean when I say this, but a lot of people that work at banks, they only have a limited knowledge even as it relates to money. Like there's a lot of things that they don't know about money. Whatever their job is, that's what they're knowledgeable about. If somebody's a teller, or if somebody is, a bank manager, they might know about managing or they might know about bank telling and just being friendly, but very little do they know about money. And so even when we go to these institutions, that doesn't automatically cause them to be knowledgeable or even an expert in the area where we might need advice in. And so sometimes the best thing that we could do is go to people who are specialists in that area. And typically when it comes to money, it's not anybody who works at a bank. Now, another secret that you really want to know and keep this in perspective is that most advisors that works at banks, most of them are not wealthy at all. Matter of fact, most of them, they're in a lot of debt, and they don't have a lot of money because a lot of them just don't make a lot of money. So like, let's start there. They don't make a lot of money. They're very skilled at answering your surface questions, but when you start talking about something related to building wealth, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to push their products, put it in a CD, or put it in a high yield savings account. But here's the thing, that's not what wealthy people do. That's not even what they do because they don't even have the money to put it in these same accounts that they're advising you to put your money in. And again, it's not a knock on them. It's just a reality. Most financial advisors that work at banks, they're broke. And again, and it's not even their fault. They just don't get paid a lot. And they're not really educated on money, even though they work at a bank. And so when you come into any kind of windfall of money, or you're really wanting to build wealth, advisors at banks are not the people that you want to go to because they don't have what you're desiring. And the thing that I really believe in is that you should never take advice from somebody that does not have what it is that you want on the other side of what they're giving you advice about. If somebody doesn't have the money you want, you shouldn't take advice from that person. If somebody doesn't have the lifestyle you want, it's probably best to not take advice from that person. Now, sure, you can learn a lot from people of what not to do, but when you really want to get 100% clear on the steps to take and what you do want, then you want somebody who's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and they know exactly how to teach you how to get to the other side of wherever they are. And when it comes to banks, most advisors don't have what you're looking for. Now, here is a big secret that the banks don't want you to know about. Banks actually want you to overdraft. Like they want you to take out more money from your account or accidentally or purposely spend more money in your account than what you actually have, because banks actually make, like, I don't know how much more, but it is like a very high number. They make more money on overdraft fees than they do any other products that they actually sell. And here's the thing, like that's not even quote unquote a product, but they make so much money off of overdraft fees. And don't even take my word for it. Like look it up for yourself. Like banks can make billions with a B, billions of dollars every single year just in overdraft fees. And they don't want you to know that. Because if you really looked at how much they make on overdraft fees, you would think that this is some kind of racket, like it's some kind of scam, like it's some kind of setup, if you will. And they make it so easy to do it. And I'm not pushing on them as if it's their fault because somebody went over. But man, if somebody only has $4.95 in their account and they buy something for $5 and you're charging them $35 for overdraft fee, like, man, how is that helping them whatsoever? You know, to me, I think it's utterly ridiculous when your overdraft fee is more than your purchase. You purchase something for $5. Your overdraft fee is $35. And that's not just once. It's every single time you do it. Banks don't want you to know that. Because being totally honest, transparent, I have been in situations where I have overdrawn my account like more than one time. You know, I remember like years and years ago, it was really tight for me. And I remember I overdraft my account and I had the account for like 3 or 4 years. And that was the first time it ever happened. And I remember asking them, would they remove this off of my account? And they were like, you know, sorry, we can't do it this time. You know, and I'm like, man, if you do it the next time, let's act like the next time is this time and do it for me. But that didn't work, you know. But I'm just saying that to say that when you really think about how the banks work and how they operate, charging a $30 or $35 overdraft fee on a purchase that's less than what they're charging, like, they're not for the people at all. And when you go to some of these banks, they make you feel like, hey, this is your bank, we're a community, they're supportive. And it's like, that's really not the case. And that is a secret that they really don't want you to know about. Because when you really look at like their business model, they put profit over people every single day, every single time. Because when people really need loans, they're not there. Because it's like, hey, if you don't have any assets that we can leverage and use and take advantage of you, then we're not going to give you this money. But if you don't need it and you got all the money in the world, we're going to throw money at you. And that's a backward system when you really think about it. And it's something that they really try to keep under wraps. Now, I kind of alluded to this in the very beginning, but something that the banks do not want you to know is that they use your money to make money, but there's a way for you to also use their money to make money. Now, again, if you don't need money, they will loan it to you. But if you're desperate, you know, you really need it, more than likely they're not going to loan it to you. And I will say this, there are ways that even if you don't really have a lot of money, there's ways where you can get like higher limits of credit. And you can use these higher limits of credit to leverage to form profits and make more money off of their money using their same system, using their same game. Like I know several people that use a lot of the bank's money, even though they have money of their own. They use a lot of the bank's money to make money because, hey, if anything happens, it goes haywire. None of their money is at risk. The only people's at risk is the banks. And it's like, that's exactly how the banks operate with us. And so these are 7 secrets that the banks don't want you to know about. And if you interact with the banks at all, I want to encourage you, and I even want to challenge you to consider ways that you can get more out of them than what they're getting from you. And if you have any like large sums of money, instead of letting it just sit in the bank and they use it and make your money work for them, use your own money and let it work for you. And if you've never heard before, there's ways where you can actually create and set up your own bank. And when you can set up your own bank, now you can pay yourself. Now you can borrow from yourself. Like now you can utilize yourself and you don't have to rely on the banks, because when they get your money, they're immediately putting it to work for everybody except you. Now, maybe you have never had any of these experiences that I mentioned, or maybe you've had something different, but I would love to hear from you in the comments. What has been your experience with banks? You know, so maybe you can share something that sheds light on something that maybe I didn't cover, and we can learn from yours as well. But I want to hear from you in the comments. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.